Okay, look, the idea is that it needs also not only to be responsible by making better lives for people, better places for people to live, and therefore, as a consequence, better places for tourists to visit, it also needs to be transformational to the livelihoods of the people who live there. Now, if you only focus on getting the product together and don't, by design, intentionally integrate the community around by economic inclusiveness as well as social inclusiveness, then you will never transform those lives permanently for those people's grandchildren. You might transform those lives short term by a little bit of money, by a little bit of employment, but unless the business is sustainable, the transformational element of those people's livelihoods will never happen.
Do you have any simple example from your practice?
Misha, life's never simple. It's a complex
complicated.
No, not complicated. It's not complicated.
Complex.
It's very, very simple, but it's very complex. Right. Okay, there is one example, and this was a program that I led for 3 years. Okay, there is a place in the southern part of Uganda called Windy Impenetrable National Park. And when it was made a national park, the people who used to use that national park, or that forest, before it was a national park, they used it for medicinal plants, they used it for water, they used it for food.
For hunting?
No. Well, they did hunt small animals and so forth. So they used the forest as a resource for their own lives. Once it became a national park, it became illegal to do that.
Okay.
So they were kicked out. But because there was no alternative livelihood for them, okay, they kept on going back to the national park, illegally doing what they were already doing, maybe even for millennia, for thousands of years. And now from one day to the next, it became illegal to continue to do what they were doing for millennia, all right? So what they were doing then was illegal. They then became poachers. So what to do about the poachers? And how to do it sustainably for them, for their families, and their children's children, right? So what we did, and this is where we did use tourism, around that area are camps and lodges where tourists go to see gorillas in this national park. But the people living around the park were not included in an economic sense, other than maybe some small employment here or there. So the solution for those poachers, or ex-poachers, was to retrain them to grow garden vegetables and herbs to sell to the camps and lodges so that tourists would eat. So when tourists come back from their trekking in the forest looking for gorillas, they go and have their lunch, and on the lunch table is salad. Before we came along, they would go 3 hours through very bad terrain to go to a big market in another town and buy vegetables which weren't even from that market. They were from somewhere else.
Yeah, not fresh, yeah.
Right? We taught these guys, we took hunters and poachers how to be market gardeners. And they passed on their skills to their wives and their kids, and now there's a thriving industry there. And a secondary benefit, we worked with a group of women who were abused from abused families, and taught them also how to grow high value, rare food like specialized herbs and specialized vegetables to sell to the camps and lodges. We already had discussions with the camps and lodges to ask them, if stuff was grown locally, what would you want to grow locally and would you buy it? So we already had a list of things that we needed an agronomist to come in and teach them how to do it. Now, these women grew certain vegetables which they had never seen before. And they thought to themselves, if these white people can eat this food and they don't get sick, maybe we should try to eat it as well. So they did. So all of a sudden, from eating bananas and sweet potatoes, they became to eat celery and beetroot, for example, and aubergine. So we had a downstream,
Transformation.
a transformational element to their diet,
Yeah.
which is good for their health, right?
Wow.
So this is what happened, and it was simple, but it took time.
Yeah, but my question is, it's take a while to make hunters and pickers agricultural guys. So before they were like pickers, they were picking stuff in the forest.
Yes, they were.
And how long did it take to make them gardeners?
3 years.
3 years only?
Yeah, 3 years. But not me. I mean, I employed an agronomist. I employed local tribal leaders. The first thing was to change the mindset, because these people are skilled subsistence dwellers. They know how to till the fields. They know how to hunt. So they're very, very skillful mentally, even though they might be completely uneducated. They're completely illiterate. They can't read, they can't write. Even their own language, they can't read or write. So we had to change the mindset first, just by sitting down and talking to them, letting them know little by little what we could do, what were the options, what were the changes that could be brought about in their life, good changes and bad changes. Mm-hmm. So eventually, after some months, they started to get the concept that if they worked with us and let us help them use their own existing skills in a different way to transform their existing skills in a different application. So from growing sweet potatoes and bananas to growing aubergines and beetroots, then they would not only have a health benefit, they would have an economic benefit, which they could pass on to their children and their grandchildren. And they got it. And then we spent the next 2.5 years actually doing it.
Lodges and camps, are they run by locals or guys who came from bigger cities?
It's mostly investors from outside, but there are one or two which are owned and run by the local people themselves. Yes.
And how was your experience in adopting local products to local camp owners and, like, let's say foreign?
Oh, they loved it.
Both loved it same?
They loved it because the thing is, you see, if you have a truck and the truck uses diesel and it's hard terrain, not built roads like asphalt, which big rainforest, so it can get washed away, there can be landslides and so forth. If you use that truck to drive 3 hours through the muddy forest to get to the big town, to go to the market,
to get salad,
it's big money. But if the local salad is grown locally, you can pick the phone, this is now communication, right?
Yeah.
And phone the grower and say, I need 15 lettuces, 2 kilograms of beetroots and 10 heads of celery. We'll send a boda boda. Boda boda is a bicycle.
Tuk-tuk.
We'll send a boda boda in 2 hours. Okay, fine, no problem. So they make one phone call from their kitchen. 2 hours later, the salad comes straight.
From farm to table,
exactly.
Yeah.
And even more, there was another element. We then created that activity as a tourist attraction. So the tourists themselves, because you go to the forest, you go looking for gorillas, and then what do? We created walking trails with local livelihoods, with local people growing bananas, potatoes, coffee, roasting, grinding and making coffee and so forth, and making local bread, and including going to these market gardens where the tourists themselves would pick their own salad and take it back to the camp, make the salad and eat the salad, and they've met the person who grew it.
Yeah, and I think this is the same place from your previous example when tourist Americans were not satisfied with just seeing gorillas. They were also requesting for local experiences, meeting local people. Is it the same place?
100%. And this is
all this satisfied this very important request for for experiences. Yeah.
For contact with local people,
For
their
contact with-
culture, their language, song, dance, music, local gastronomy, blah, blah, blah. And I know what you're referring to. We came for the gorillas, we went home with the people.
I remember.
That's
yeah.
exactly the story.